I'm told the minister has been able to finish earlier his engagement and is on the platform. And if you may, Chair, we allow him to lead us, and then I'll come in.
Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Probably might be having challenges. Voyo, his parliamentary officer, indicated that he was connected. That's why I then made that request through you. But let's just proceed. If he gets his things right, he will communicate. But allow me, Chair, I am with the delegation from the Civilian Secretariat led by the Acting Secretary, Mr. Ramaru. If you may, for the sake of time, allow him to make the presentation on the amendment, the criminal law amendment bill that we are supposed to present this morning through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We can continue.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, and Honorable members. I'm Dakarani Ramaru, the Acting Secretary for Police Service. With me, I'm with Advocate Don Bell, who is the head of our legislation unit, Dr. Philip Jacobs from also legislation unit, Mr. Melton Ndwana, also from legislation unit, Ayanda Kongwana, Director Executive Support, and Kusima Zibuko, PLO. I will request through you, Chairperson, Advocate Bell, to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, continue.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning once again. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Deputy Minister, honorable members, Acting Secretary for Police Service, and all colleagues. I'm going to now start with the presentation, and if we can move straight on then, I'm just going to deal with the background and introduction and then the summary of the bill. If we can move to slide 3, please, Puzi. Thank you. So in terms of the background and introduction, Chair, the Criminal Law Forensic Procedures Amendment Act 2013 provides for, among other provisions, the transitional provisions for the taking of buccal samples from all persons who have been convicted and sentenced to imprisonment in terms of any offense listed in Schedule 8 of the Criminal Procedure Act 1997. And these, Chair, for example, are murder, rape, sexual assault, any sexual offense against a child or a person who is mentally disabled, child stealing, kidnapping, robbery, and so forth. This, Chair, within a period of 2 years from the date of commencement of the Act. Being transitional provisions, Chair, there is no possibility to extend the transitional period beyond the 2 years provided for in terms of this Act. The Act was put into operation on 27 January 2015, and the period of 2 years determined by the Act expired on 26 January 2017. However, the police service were unable to complete the process of taking of buccal samples from all convicted Schedule 8 offenders within the period of 2 years provided for in the Act. Slide 4, please. Still on the background and introduction, Chair. Just for in addition to what is on the slides there, Chair, the bill was finalized during late 2017. And around May 2018, the process was suspended pending the consideration of, number one, information regarding figures of outstanding Schedule 8 offenders still to be sampled. And number two, a request was made to the Minister of Home Affairs to extend the taking of buccal samples to all citizens of the country, commencing with infants from birth. After lengthy delays, during this communication with the Department of Home Affairs, who finally informed the drafting team that they would first need to conduct research on the feasibility of this request, as well as the constitutional repercussions thereto. It was decided that the department proceed with the current bill in view of the time it would take for the Department of Home Affairs to legislate for the buccal sampling of all citizens of the country. However, Chair, the failure to take the buccal samples resulted in a large number of persons serving sentences in terms of Schedule 8 offences once their sentences were served to be released without buccal samples having been taken from them. So when the transitional period of 2 years lapsed, it became necessary to amend the Act in order to again empower authorized members of the police service to take buccal samples from convicted Schedule 8 offenders serving sentences of imprisonment. So a huge obstacle, Chair, in this regard that was encountered by the police in taking these buccal samples was the refusal of such persons to have their buccal samples taken. This clearly is as a result of the fear that they could be linked to other unsolved cases where their DNA samples were not taken before. So, Chair, as you will note, the bill also proposes to address this obstacle. Slide 5, please, Buzi. So in terms of the processes, the notice was given in terms of the Rule 276 sub 1 sub B of the Rules of the National Assembly that the Minister of Police intends to introduce the Criminal Law Forensic Procedures Amendment Bill 2021 in the National Assembly. The necessary documents were published in the Gazette on the 10th of December 2021. So on the 20th of December, Chair, 2021, introduction and referral of the bill to this committee took place, as well as the referral to the joint tagging mechanism for classifications in terms of Joint Rule 160. Then, Chair, in terms of the summary of the bill, then this bill consists of 2 clauses with a number of sub-clauses, and they relate largely to Section 7, Sub 7 of the Principal Act, which deals with the transitional arrangements. And so therefore a new section substitutes Section 7, Sub 7 in the Principal Act. So Clause 1, Chair, deals with the definitions, and there's no new definitions to consider in this instance. So we move on to Clause 2, Sub A of the bill. So this clause substitutes Section 7.7 of the Act for the provision identical to the previous subsection 7, but without the limitation to the period allowed to take buccal samples of persons convicted for Schedule 8 offences. It was proposed, Chair, to remove the 2-year period from the section to avoid a reoccurrence for further amendments. On slide 7 then, the proposed subsection 7A provides for the taking of buccal samples from any person serving a sentence of imprisonment in respect of any offence listed under Schedule 7, Schedule 8 of the Criminal Procedures Act. And Chair, this takes place in 2 instances. 1, before the release of the person if the buccal sample had not already been taken upon his or her arrest. And number 2, before the release of a person either on parole or under correctional service supervision by a court. And then the following 2 subsections, proposed subsections are new, and they provide for mandatory reporting processes. So the first one then is subsection 7B, which provides for the National Commissioner of Correctional Services to report the prescribed information of Schedule 8 offenders to the National Commissioner of SAPS at least 3 months before the planned release date of such persons. And in addition, to report on the implementation of the requirements for taking of buccal samples from these convicted offenders on a quarterly basis. This subsection, Chair, will strengthen the Act by enforcing this provision to ensure implementation is actually taking place, and that it also enforces accountability. Then the proposed subsection 7C provides that the National Commissioner of SAPS must on a quarterly basis submit a report to the Minister on the progress made concerning the taking of buccal samples from convicted Schedule 8 offenders. This way, Chair, the Minister is also kept informed of the progress of the buccal sampling of convicted offenders, And like the above provision, it will also ensure accountability. So, Chair, the current Act provides the power for SAPS to take buccal samples of persons upon arrest in terms of Schedule 8 of offenders. And as Section 36, capital D, sub 1 provides for the obligatory taking of buccal samples of all persons suspected of having committed Schedule 8 offences. However, Chair, this obligatory taking of buccal samples was not put into operation for reasons that the SAPS were unable to comply with it. So the obligatory taking of DNA samples from the 31st of January 2022 should lead to a situation where eventually it would become unnecessary to use Section 7.7 as buccal samples would have already been taken upon arrest of such persons. Slide 9, please. Thank you. Then clause 2B of the bill proposes the insertion after Section 7.7 of the Act, the following subsections. Chair, the proposed subsection deals with the enforcement of taking of buccal samples. So Section 7, capital A, provides for the lodging of an application by the National Commissioner of SAPS to a judge or magistrate for a warrant against a convicted Schedule 8 offender who refuses to submit to the taking of his or her buccal sample. And as previously mentioned, Chair, one of the reasons for the delay in taking buccal samples was that some offenders simply refused to submit to the process. So now these provisions make it mandatory. Then subsection 7, capital B, provides that in order to ensure the enforcement of an obligation for the taking of these samples, that an authorized person may, assisted by the correctional officials, use minimum force against such a person who refuses to submit to the taking of a buccal sample. So, Chair, these provisions are within the constitutional bounds. And also, Minister requested that we conduct a desktop research of other countries and to see what happens in those countries. So what we did was we did a desktop research, and that revealed that some countries such as Australia, the Netherlands, Japan, China, Germany, Kenya, Malaysia also use minimum force where and when necessary to take buccal samples from this type of inmates. So we can go to slide 10. So slide 10, subsection 7, capital C, requires the National Commissioner of SAPS in consultation with the National Commissioner of Correctional Services to issue and publish in the Gazette instructions which will indicate how the use of minimum force contemplated in the previous section will take place. So this will clearly explain, Chair, how the use of minimum force is to be administered in the event that such minimum force does become necessary. Then there's a subsection 7, capital D, which is aligned to the provisions of section 32 sub 5 and sub 6 of Correctional Services Act 1998, and this relates to the use of force to apply as provided for in the proposed subsection in 7B that I spoke about just now, Chair. So this requirement is for a medical examination and the treatment of an inmate after the use of force and the reporting of such use of force to the inspecting judge of any use of force. And that brings me to the conclusion, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. That's our presentation.
Thanks, Chair. I must indicate that the minister is on the line with us now, but thanks. That is the presentation, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister, do you have something to say?
Good morning, Team Chair. Nothing except that the areas that were led by Deputy Minister before I joined at 9, I would concur, because the matter has been discussed and canvassed by the Deputy Minister, myself, and the presenter. So nothing new that I would add, unless on the discussion there are things to be further clarified. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister. Can we engage with the report? Can I see hands? Sheikh Imam, Honorable Majosi. We'll start with Honorable Sheikh Imam, followed by Honorable Majosi, followed by Honorable Whitfield.
No, so it's a legacy hand.
Or is a legacy hand? Can you drop it? So it will be Honorable Sheikh Imam, Honorable Whitfield, Honorable Terblanche, Honorable Shembeni, Honorable Misha. In that order, please. Let's follow one another in that order. Honorable Sheikh Imam, you can start.
Chairperson, I think it's an old hand. You never lowered it.
Okay. Honorable Whitfield.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chair, this is a very good day for this committee. This committee has relentlessly pursued this issue since 2019, and I'm sure the previous committee before us. But the committee has to take the opportunity to express our extreme dissatisfaction with the executive chair. There has been no good reason ever presented to this committee for the inordinate delay in bringing this bill to Parliament. It is not a controversial piece of legislation, and it is effectively an extension of the existing act in order to ensure that justice is brought to bear for the victims of the most heinous crimes in our country. When this bill was drafted approximately 5 years ago, and in the interim period since the transitional period expired in 2017, at least 100,000 convicted Schedule 8 offenders have been released on parole without their DNA being taken and uploaded onto the DNA database. I mean, that is a complete miscarriage of justice. So I'd like to thank the members of the committee for their incredible work, Chair, in applying this pressure, and civil society for threatening legal action to get this bill to Parliament so that we can get going and make sure that we close all of the gaps that currently exist. Chair, the ministers previously told Parliament that SAPS has continued taking buccal samples of Schedule 8 offenders since the expiry of the transitional provision, but it is not clear in terms of which legislation SAPS has been doing so. I think the committee needs to know which piece of legislation has empowered SAPS to continue taking buccal samples for this purpose of convicted Schedule 8 offenders. I think it would just be interesting to know, because if they have been doing that, in the absence of this legislation or any other empowering legislation, that would obviously be a concern. That would be the first question. And then for each year, I would be very interested to know, for every year that since the Act came into operation, what the total number of Schedule 8 convicted offenders are for each year and how many were actually sampled. We need to know what the extent of the backlog of unsampled convicted Schedule 8 offenders is, because we know that the Forensics Division is facing enormous challenges, which they are slowly and steadily overcoming, which is positive. But the fact remains is that there is a backlog of existing DNA analysis of case exhibits. If we now introduce an increase in the number of samples required to be tested and added to the database, what are the implications for the Forensics Division? What is the total backlog of convicted Schedule 8 offenders that still need to be sampled? Because that will give us an idea of how long this project will actually take, because it's not clear whether SAPS is actually in a position to hit the ground running. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Terblanche, I thought you just follow.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I'll follow now. Chairperson, there was quite a delay to start doing this work, and obviously caused, serious, it had serious implications. And my question is, the executive authority should obviously indicate to us who is going to be held accountable and what consequence management will be done. Chairperson, my understanding is that the main cause of the delay in the amendment was the Minister of Police's aspiration to establish a national population DNA database. Now, I just want confirmation that that is the case and whether that is the real cause, uh, obviously delaying this whole issue. Chairperson, and then obviously a very important question is the police now ready to start with the implementation of Section 2 of the DNA Act? Um, we need, the Honorable Whitfield mentioned, that is going to add to the current sort of numbers that they are getting on a daily basis. Chairperson, and then I have certain concerns. We do support this legislation, but I have a concern. We've learned now, and I want clarity about that a person, the sample will be taken now in future during the arrest of a person. Now, at that stage, the person is only a suspect. Now, I'm just checking whether that is, the correct procedure to take that sample from a suspect only. It's not charged at the moment, and, obviously, the person is also not guilty of anything at that stage. That is my first concern. Secondly, Chairperson, I am also concerned about the issue of the so-called minimum force. It is nowhere defined in legislation at the moment, and I don't know what exactly that is going to entail. And I'm just worried, Chairperson, and my question is, aren't there other avenues open to us to maybe tackle something like this in a more humane, civilized way? I am concerned that we are moving in the wrong direction again, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you for now. Those are my questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't know whether I'm the next speaker, Honorable Shembeni. Chairperson, thanks for the presentation. Now, what I would like to know is what are the consequence management measures that have been implemented against those detectives failing to take or to utilize and monitor the taking of buccal samples, as this was provided as a reason for the poor performance on the performance of target to take buccal samples of 60% of persons arrested on Schedule 8 offense. Secondly, on the refusal of the taking of buccal samples by the so-called convicted offenders. Now, the SAPS should indicate to us whether they anticipate a large portion of convicted Schedule 8 offenders to refuse to submit to a buccal sample being taken. What was the experience during the 2-year transitional period of 2015 and 2017? What number of convicted Schedule 8 offenders refused a buccal sample? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Two short questions. The first one has to do with minimal force, as some of my colleagues have raised. The definition of minimal. Minimal is a broad term. How do we accurately define minimal? We have seen some police punching people or maybe even slapping. Now, to slap a person is that minimal force. When a person refuses to cooperate, and you are allowed to use minimal force, how do we define minimal and where are we going to draw the line? We have seen police also kneeling on people, kneeing them while they are on the ground. So to take the samples and use minimal force because of the refusal of the suspect or convict, the challenge is defining minimal, because I think our understanding of minimal force would differ from one person to the other. So are there going to be details given of what one can do and one cannot do with the use of minimal force? Is my first question. And the second one has to do with taking samples, buccal samples from people who are not yet convicted. What would happen to those people if they are acquitted? At what stage are those samples going to be destroyed, and when, and how will we know that those samples have all been destroyed? Or are those samples going to be kept on file and hope that the person from whom they were taken would commit a crime one day? We don't know. So the challenge would be to keep the buccal samples of people who have been declared innocent. So when are they going to be destroyed? And at what stage will they be destroyed? Because one does not want to have samples, DNA samples, buccal samples kept even when you have not committed any crime or you have been found not guilty. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorables. I think for now, those are the questions. Honorable Minister.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can, Minister.
Yes, good morning again, Chairperson. I don't know what's going on with the linkage today. The team will answer some questions. Chairperson, I want to go to the first question asked by Honorable Whitfield of us continuing taking the buccal samples out of the legislation. I think even the presentation said that those people went through without taking it, because there were two reasons. I know that the first reason was kicked by the portfolio committee even before it started. I have said that we wrote the Department of Home Affairs requesting that this should be generic, Chairperson, and the South African standards, as you would know that the fingerprints are taken.
Is that the clubhouse?
Hello? Chair?
Continue, Minister.
So that are taken like the fingerprints. That correspondence was given to the Home Affairs, whom they said they were looking at it. It has not been placed anywhere, has not been developed by the Home Affairs, which indeed the committee raised the issue of that as a delay, and it's going to be a very difficult process to win in South Africa. The second one, Chair, even with the bill, many people could not be taken, those Schedule 8 people, because the bill did not have the enforcement element within it. So if you say no, it would be just no. If you hide and you are called and you don't avail yourself, that will be so. Maybe that leads to the next question of the minimal force that will be taken. Both Honorable Tereblach and Honorable Mfundis Masha they put this element of civilization and the time where we are. Indeed, it would be very good if we work that way and everybody just comply and we get this Buccal and we go on with life. The team will be trained to do that, and I guess we will have to establish maybe. Remember, there is a judge that deals with the issues of the inmates. Maybe establish what would be allowed as a minimum force. But the issue here is that at the end of the day, the sample must be taken, and do that in between of the civilization, in between of the human nature, that people are still have human rights even when they are inmates, but also the system will have to give us those results going forward. I think that can be found in between. If it needs to be, the judge will have to be brought in on that. That is responsible for the inmates matters, and we agree how we do with that. Chairperson, again, honorable member Whitfield raises the issue of capacity. I want to believe that we are really beginning to do well, honorable members, on this one. The laboratories, especially both Cape Town and Pretoria, have been really capacitated. We have gone out, honorable members, we have invited back the people that were there, intent that were in the system. We, for instance, the Western Cape have managed to get about 20 or 19 out of 24. We have managed to hand them and bring them back to the system. Unfortunately, some have found the jobs, permanent jobs, and they can't come back. All 16 contracts that for some reason have not been signed, those have been signed now, and the maintenance is all there. Sure, the members that have visited the laboratory before, they would find that all machines have some red stamps that is out of order. All that has been fixed. The question of extra hours has been fixed. The money for the money for double shift has been found. The money was there, is still there. We are able to find the money for overtime so that we have 16-hour day rather than the 8-hour day. We wanted to have a 24-hour day. We were told that machines can't take the stress of 24 hours, so they need to rest. But we are really pushing. As we have eaten, Mr. Whitefield, President gave the correct number, but as you would argue in your debate, that he gave the number of the ring fence backlog, which has moved from 188,000 to 58,000. We're really moving there. Even the one that you said was 210, we have moved to that one. We're around 159,000. We have separated our teams. We have found the narrative that said we have the sprinter samples and the marathon samples. Those that they take several stages to be finalized. They have been ring-fenced, and those that they take once off have been finalized, and the teams have been divided as such. We believe that we are moving on the right direction. That will be your Pretoria and your Cape Town. We have been in Durban last week with the Deputy Minister, very unsatisfactory issues in that laboratory, to such an extent that the workers, some of them there, will be moved to further capacitate Cape Town, because the issues of Amanzimtoti, that place has been flooded. We're trying to move. The place has been fouled, but we have a serious problem working with the public works on those things. The Eastern Cape, the construction has been started, everything. We expect that in 2 years to 3 years, everything will be finalized and the capacity will be full there. That is medium and long term. So we believe that in the not distant future, every pressure will be able to carry it before. We want to increase even the capacity. We are trying to recruit more than 100 new BSCs intakes so that they are forever capacitated in personnel and machines, and we never go back where we come from. So we believe that even with those backlogs of those that will be taken from Schedule 8, and even that load that will be taken, will be able to carry it going forward. Chairperson, I will then request that the team led by the Deputy Minister will answer other questions. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Minister, for those responses, which covered most of the issues. And I fully concur with what you have said through your chair. I must also indicate that the narrative that suggests that we are bringing this amendment here because of we were taken to court is not correct. We do acknowledge that this matter should have been processed earlier, and it hasn't. That we acknowledge that we should have. We know it should have been done yesterday, and we share the concerns that members are raising. But we had to take a decision to proceed to come to the committee because we felt the other processes is going to delay if we are going to have one act that deals with the entire citizens. We felt we should bring this in here, and we are happy that generally members of the committee are happy that at last the bill is before the committee so that the amendment is effected and the job get done. But I just thought I should clear that part, that it is not because of any court case that have made us to come here. We took the decision led by the minister that this matter must be concluded, and we did exactly that. But of course, we do take note that this matter should have been resolved some times back. I don't have much because the minister have adequately responded to the issues. I may just, through you, allow Advocate Don Bell to make comments on areas that might not have been further elaborated in the comments that the minister and myself made. If you may allow, Chairperson. Advocate Bell.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've been asked to respond to the issues. Firstly, the concern about the taking of buccal samples of persons who have not been convicted. Of course, that is already covered in terms of Section 36D1 and 36D2, which are both in operation now, and which allows for the taking of buccal samples of a person upon arrest. The only change is now that from the 31st of January, it is obligatory for the SAPS to take the DNA samples of all suspects and not just some of them. Chairperson, the issue of minimum force has been raised by quite a number of honorable members. I can just mention this is actually a duplication in the sense that already in the South African Police Service Act, police members in terms of that act is expected to use minimum force in whatever actions they are taking. So it is very difficult in legislation to really define an issue such as minimum force. It is very much the same as with private defense. It relates to the circumstances under which things take place. And it is for a court then to decide whether excessive force had been used. We can also look at the taking of fingerprints, the taking of blood samples. There are also opposition to that by people sometimes, and that has to be overcome because a person can't flaunt the whole system of criminal justice because of his refusal to subject him to these type of actions. When it comes to minimum force, there's also a provision in the bill that the National Commissioner can actually make a national instruction to specify how minimum force should be applied. And I can imagine that in terms of the taking of a buccal sample, that should not be that intricate. If a person is just contained and it's just taking the sample on the inside of his mouth, it's actually less invasive than taking a blood sample. Of course, you can also get a situation where a person who's arrested and his buccal sample is taken, that person can also refuse. But in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, you are also allowed to take a blood sample, and the DNA sample can also be derived from a blood sample. So in that regard, already that can be done in respect of persons being arrested. But of course, with the number of convicted persons, etc., to take blood samples of everyone who refuses to do it would really be very difficult. So, Chair, I think most of the concerns that have been raised are actually addressed in the Act, and it is possible in terms of reporting and those issues that there can be supplements to the bill as it is at the moment. But I trust that the questions have been replied. There are, of course, other questions relating to numbers, etc., which I suppose the police service itself will reply to. Thank you, Chair.
Chair?
Yes. Are you okay, Minister?
Yes, Chair.
All right. I see the hand of Honorable Shembeni and Honorable Majosi and Honorable Whitfield. Honorable Shembeni, is it a legacy hand?
Chairperson, yes, Chairperson. I've not had any answer on the consequence management measures that are being taken against those detectives failing to take or utilize the buccal samples. Thank you.
Honorable Majosi.
No, thank you, Chair. My concern, maybe and question also would be on section 4.4 related to costing states, as it is estimated that the total for the implementation of the criminal law forensic procedures bill once enacted will be about 78.4 million. Is this an annual cost or a once-off cost? I just wanted to check on that so that I would know whether we'll be budgeting this money annually, or is it something that will happen just once off?
Honorable Whitfield.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the question on the total number of unsampled convicted Schedule 8 offenders. So effectively, what is the backlog of unsampled or Schedule 8 offenders who've not had their DNA taken, so that we know, that this is the starting point, This is the total number of convicted Schedule 8 offenders which still need to be sampled so that they can be added to the database. This is absolutely important for our oversight role. And I think that there's probably someone from the South African Police Service that should be answering that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Terplanch, followed by Honorable Mishwe.
Chairperson, thank you. I heard the response from Advocate Jacobs. I'm just wondering, Chairperson, what the reaction was on this issue of minimum force during the public participation stage, because I am still concerned about this. From where we are coming, Chairperson, the word force by the police, where we are dealing already with a police service that is not very well behaved always. I think that is a dangerous principle. And I was just wondering what the public's response was. Thank you.
Chairperson, since DNA samples are going to be taken from all suspects, my question was, will those samples be kept on the database even though the suspect has been acquitted, or what is going to happen to them? And if they are going to be kept on the database, would it be because the suspect is expected to commit another crime, or what would be the reason to keep it when the suspect has been acquitted? Thank you, sir.
Sorry for that. Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, on Honorable Honorable Member Shembedi, the consequent management will have to be found from the management of the South African Police. How far have they gone with that? I can really make an undertaking that question will be bent and find out from the police management if and when they've done that, and he'll get his response. When it comes to the number, again, with Honorable Honorable Member Whitefield, I think it was raised, I think, by the Deputy Minister that the number would be not on hand. And as you have said, Honorable Member Whitefield, that the South African Police, I guess, together with the Correctional Service officials, especially those that they are at the end of the system, those responsible for parole and release, we can get that number. I don't think we have the number at hand as we speak. So it will be not a very correct number to get, but that number could be found and be supplied to yourself, so that I agree with you, we are able to monitor how much has been eaten out of that number. Again, on the question of the minimum force, I will call on Dr. Jacobs, but Babum Fundis, as we speak, the law allows, that is your question, and the Honorable Terry Placher, the law allows that the minimum force is used by the South African police as we speak. You don't know how much resistance that you found, especially when you're on the roadblocks and people have taken some stuff that goes in their hand. telling the police to go to hell and all those kind of things. But police, they'll have to, they are measured, allowed by the law to continue to do their work. Just imagine what it would happen if every person, every offender says, I'm not going to get arrested, and you simply say, go home because you don't want to be arrested when you have really committed crime. So just imagine what would happen. I think it would be measured, people would be trained, but I've made the point that on this one, we have an oversight of a judge that can be part of the process if it needs be. But Jacobs can continue on that and continue, I think, on the cost going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I can just mention, in addition to the issue of minimum force, that I think we must specifically look at this instance at the use of minimum force in attaining the objective that we want to obtain in terms of this act. And that is to get a buccal sample from a person. You know, it's not a case of a person who is threatening your life, etc., etc. It is just a matter of subjecting the person to such a degree that the buccal sample can actually be taken. And we know that there are a lot of mechanisms in law, and that is in every country so, that in order to enforce the law, you have to do certain things. And whenever the police is using excessive force, it's like with self-defense. If you use excessive force, you are, in terms of the civil law, you are liable for the actions that you have taken. And we know there's quite a huge number of civil litigation against the SAPS, but that is the mechanism that's in the legal system for the use of excessive force. And as I've said, I think within the context of this act, it can be quite well defined in terms of the national instruction on the issue of minimum force. On the taking of buccal samples of arrested persons, of course, that is limited in the sense that it may only be taken from people who are arrested or suspects in Schedule 8 offenses. And Chair, I think the Honorable Meshwe will remember when we dealt with this act, that Schedule 8 was specifically drafted with a view of the type of cases where DNA can play a role. Housebreakings, murder, rape, etc. So the taking of buccal samples is limited to those offenses only. Then also a question from the Honorable Meshwe is the issue of persons who are found not guilty after their buccal samples have been taken. And that was dealt with in the initial act that was adopted by Parliament. Once there's a time period laid down for the head of the forensic laboratory for the destruction, once he's being informed that a person has been found not guilty, and those buccal samples must be destroyed. Thank you, Chair. Regarding the cost, etc., I'm not in a position. I am quite sure that someone from the forensic laboratory from the SAPS might be able to answer the question on the costs for the implementation.
Thank you.
Chair?
Yes, DM?
No, thanks very much. I take note of what the minister has said with regards to issues that will need SAPS. But I was just saying, because they are also connected on the platform, though they came here prepared for a different presentation. But if they are able to shed light on some of the issues that were raised, we should allow them to do so, but also to commit that the reports, as the minister suggested, will be brought to the committee in areas where they don't have specific cases. And if you allow, they are led here by the Deputy National Commissioner, Lieutenant General Vuma. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
And
DM.
General Levias also. Yeah.
Maybe before I give to General Uma, Honorable Linda Moss, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Chairperson, thank you very much. Mine is also, while we're dealing with the DNA bill, I want to inform the committee about a terrible thing was happening the week before last week in the Western Cape in Claver. And I observed that everyone, maybe you see it on TV. I visiting the area last weekend, Monday. I visiting the Claver police station. While I arrived there, the road was being blocked. So I take the back road from Fernandal. And when I arrived there, I saw the community is marching in and picketing and so forth and so forth. So I entered the police station, I show my card and they opened for me the gate and I go in. And then I met the police station captain and he briefed me about the matter, about the case. 13-year-old child has been murdered and is been cut. Whatever he interrogated the suspect didn't apply for bail, refused to apply for bail. But what I want to bring under the attention is while the minister and deputy minister and the deputy commissioner is also in this meeting, that they must really giving resources to that police station. That police station is under the resource. And also the issue of the DMA, they getting people from Cape Town to do the DMA. But what I want to ask in begging that they make that case a priority on the issue of the DNA test. They mustn't be one of those who are still waiting for the DNA test. They must make that case must be a priority on the DNA test. I'm begging today of the 16th of February that we really be up hand on that matter so that that community can become calm and also that the family, the mother and the father can really get injustice for the children or for the child. And I think the child, the innocent child must be really, that case must be really get a priority on the issue of the DNA test. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I give it
Chair.
to SAPS now?
Chair, on this question of Honorable Moss, before maybe the Deputy National Commissioner Vuma comes in, we are working with the prosecution. There is some prioritization as we are trying to push everything, but there are prioritization. I'm sure the police and the prosecution working together on that one, the prioritization will be made as there are some of those cases. I wanted to assure the honorable member that we'll pursue that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Continue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, Minister of Police and the Deputy Minister of Police and all colleagues in the meeting. I must emphasize that yes, there is going to be a national instruction that is already started from our legal services. They are working hand in glove with the Civilian Secretariat, which we shall articulate the step by step that needs to be followed by members of the South African Police Service as and when they implement the bill. In regard to the consequence management, as we are all aware that consequence management is a line function responsibility, though we have the General Maxim who is working under detective services, but I'm sure he might not have full details in regard to specific cases that are being referred in this meeting. I just want to say that we will compile a report and we'll submit it with the specifics in regard to how far we have gone in taking consequence management against those who might have refused to take the Buccal samples. The cost for the implementation also, we have a member, a general from the forensic services, but I think we will be able to provide the detail in a form of a report regarding the cost for the implementation of the bill. The information by Honorable Member Linda Moss regarding this specific matter, we will obtain the necessary details and make sure that we address what has been requested. However, our minister and the deputy minister have responded to most of the questions. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
All right. There's a question about public participation. From Honorable Terplanch. Can we respond to that?
Chairperson, if I may respond to that, I'm not quite sure about the question. Does it relate to the lootings and things that took place or on the bill? I can just say the bill, as a result of the fact that we regard it as extremely urgent at this stage, was not published in the Gazette, as we can bring it directly to Parliament, and in view of the involvement of the public as well, and the fact that the Portfolio Committee also published the bill for comments. We can't respond to public comments on the use of force issue. Of course, I think that most people that will respond on that might be people who are inmates in prison, who might not like that idea to be in the bill. But Chair, if it relates to the issue about the response of the public in reaction to the issues that took place during the looting, etc., I really think there are investigations and things ongoing in that regard, and I don't think I'm able to respond to that. Thank you.
Chair.
Hi, Minister. Yes, Minister, continue.
Well, on the question of the public, you would remember that that would be more legislation dealing with it. But at the cabinet level, this matter of the force or minimum force was discussed. I remember that the most concerned person on it was President, and he did emphasize the point, and the cabinet as a whole emphasized the point that this measurement of minimum will have to be found and be measurable. So it's just not a question that would worry the Honorable Mr. Terry Blash, but where these matters have been discussed, they've been an issue. We are very much aware of it, and this suggestion of working even with the judge, it's part of it. So what we can say is that indeed we can't go outside the law in using that minimum, including those that will be trained. It will be important, but the bottom line is that the work will still have to be done with extra care that we don't go beyond the law and we use the extra law. Just maybe keep understanding that people are human rights, even those, by the way, that have violated other people's human rights, they still do have human rights. We will be looking after their human rights, even when they have failed to look on other people's human rights. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. I think, colleagues, we are done on this item. If there's a need to follow up on certain things, let's do so. Like the DM has said, where questions need further research of more information, and the officials are not ready with that information now, they will submit that in the subsequent meetings or in writing via the chairperson of the committee. Do you allow me to step out of this item and go to the next item? I think we're fine, yeah, with this item.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Before we go to the next item, just to inform the committee that I got the information that the chairperson is hospitalized. That's why we couldn't get hold of her. I got a call that she's hospitalized. I think further details will be forthcoming. We just want to wish her a speedy recovery. What's the next item, Babalo? Babalo, next item.
The last item is consideration of underspending by SAPS.
Okay. Honorable Minister, can you lead us on this one? Honorable Minister.
I'm here, Chair.
Yes, we're
Chair,
now on the item on underspending.
Chair, the question of underspending is overall a very concerning issue on the Ministry of Police, and I guess the community at large, and I guess with the management of the South African Police themselves. I will allow and request the Deputy National Commissioner Vuma, I'm sure she will deal with the CFO or whoever represent to make the presentation. There are figures that don't look very well when you are so much under budgeted, as the honorable members will know. What has happened to the budget of the South African Police is really highly unacceptable. That even that budget that is under budgeted is also underutilized by the members or by the South African Police Service, especially on the very sensitive areas like your public policing, like your detectives, like your intelligence. Maybe through Chair, you can allow to see the figures and the police explain, and then will be taken on the deliberation thereafter. That's what I want to say as an opening statement, Chair.
Okay, Lieutenant General.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Of course, the Minister is correct to say that it is quite a concerning issue that we are experiencing to some of the extent, some under expenditures, if I may, in advance, amongst others, is due to the fact that we are really experiencing some dependencies in some of our expenditures, such as in the environment of facility management, IT space. We equally had some challenges with regards to machinery and equipment, where we have placed some orders with the vehicle manufacturers, but they had to cancel them because the entire industry had a challenge in regard to some chip that was not available in the world that needed to be used for the manufacturing of the vehicles. However, we have been able to be assisted by looking at other manufacturers who promised that before the end of the financial year, they will be in a position to assist. Is over 2 billion that was earmarked for the purchase of the vehicles. Without me alluding to the presentation, the CFO will take us through the presentation, and then we will be able to see those visibilities in the presentation. However, we are making strides towards ensuring that we put other measures in place to circumvent the challenges that is being experienced with regard to the under expenditure. If you allow me, with your permission, General Dimpane, our CFO, will take us through the presentation. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to the Chairperson, honorable members of the committee, to the Minister, Deputy Minister, all the DMCs, and my colleagues in the platform. Chair, we will be taking you through this presentation. It will cover status as at the 31st of January. If we go to the next slide, we will be taking the committee through in terms of the total budget versus expenditure per program, per item, as well as at economic level. We have also highlighted the reasons for low spending or underspending, as well as the actions that we have put in place as management to ensure that we mitigate this challenge. Chair, in terms of expenditure analysis, we indicating that past expenditure for multiple years are utilized to perform an expenditure analysis and to project anticipated baseline expenditure in the financial year. Although indicative of nature, the expenditures of each quarter in a financial year will not be precisely equal. And this is caused by reasons such as delivery of vehicles, delivery of other equipment, invoices from DPW, payment of salary increases and paid progression, etc., that each has its own unequal spending pattern. In the next slide, Chair, this is expenditure analysis. This is a comparison of monthly spending with previous financial year. This is just to give a view in terms of comparisons per month, and for the committee to also see this particular spending pattern. Chair, in the next slide, presenting total budget versus expenditure per program, you will see that at the end of January, there were two programs that were still below the 80% mark. That will be a program one, it was performing at 74.6%, program two performing at 81.8%, with program three performing at 78.5%, and program four, crime intelligence, performing over 80% at 81.8%, and program five performing at 81.3%. The total performance for the vote out of a 100.473 billion that has been allocated as at end of January, we had spent 80 billion in this regard, which is 79.7%. I must just indicate, Honorable Chairperson, that we are monitoring this on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Up to Monday, all these programs are performing above 80%. Chair, on the next slide, total budget versus expenditure. This is just an explanation per program. Program one, administration, goods and services expenditure were low as at end of January. It was lower than anticipated, and the impact there is TMS service level agreements, as well as projects and capital works building projects and other capital procurements that still need to realize. In terms of program two, visible policing, we had capital procurement, mostly vehicles, that still needs to be delivered and paid. Expenditure of unrest project that took place in July and August was also incurred under this program. Program three, detective services, is mainly affected by the integrated criminal justice strategy, where spending was low. Some other goods and services expenditure are also lower than anticipated, and also vehicles still need to be delivered and paid under program three. Program four and five were fairly on track, with spending by both programs, as compensation services is a major cost driver. Also for these two programs, vehicles still need to be delivered and paid. When we go to total budget versus expenditure per line item, Chair, here we are just indicating compensation of employees. There are no issues there. It was fairly on track with 82.8% performance. The challenge being, as alluded earlier by the Deputy National Commissioner, that we are having challenges within your buildings. This is within your supply chain or infrastructure environment where we are experiencing challenges that we will allude to in the upcoming slides. Chair, in the next slide, compensation of employees, as I indicated, spending was at 82.8 of allocated budget, and it's marginally lower than anticipated. We still had at the time various HR priorities that needed to be processed at different intervals. Spending on goods and services comprised of 75.2 at that time. We are having challenges on the integrated criminal justice strategy, where spending was low, and the realization of various earmarked funding, which must still gather momentum. That is your TMS service level agreements with SITA and TMS projects, as well as provincial additions or additional allocation that were given to provinces. Chair, transfers and subsidies, vehicle licenses, renewal payments were a little bit lower than anticipated, but some renewal periods are closer to the end of the financial year, resulting from delivery of schedules of previous years. SITA payments were on track, and we also had an increased expenditure on exit payments. Payment of capital assets, as we indicated, that's where the department is experiencing challenges. It was performing at 36.2% of the allocated budget. Chair, I will take the committee through the reasons for this low underspending, this low spending or underspending. In terms of vehicles, Chair, we experienced a shortage of vehicles that was from the OEMs or original equipment manufacturers that are participating on the RT57 contract. We experienced slow delivery by these manufacturers who are citing shortage of materials and parts as part of the reasons for delays in the manufacturing process. Some manufacturers had partially cancelled vehicle orders anticipated to be delivered at the end of the financial year. We have highlighted those manufacturers, Chair, on the presentation, and vehicle orders that were cancelled by the manufacturers were subsequently successfully replaced by other orders placed with other manufacturers, and those manufacturers who then replaced the others gave us confirmation that delivery will take place before the end of March. The division supply chain is currently finalizing orders to ensure that the total budget for vehicles is utilized before the end of March. So the problem was picked up, Chair, and the department put systems in place or measures in place to mitigate this particular challenge. Chair, buildings and infrastructure, these are the projects that are dealt with DPW. We had various reasons. There were delays in the appointment of consultants for projects. Other reasons, such as delayed in sketch plans approvals, were experienced, Chair. As it continues on the next slides, in other projects, Chair, we had community disruptions as a result of communities demanding 30% subcontracting and technical delays from redesigns due to previously unknown site conditions. There are regular meetings that are taking place between SAPS as well as the PW for intervention considerations and progress on projects. Chair, there are other projects that the department is handling on their own. We had challenges there as well, where local authorities working on rotation, causing a backlog on planning application. This created delays on council resolutions for rezoning. We also experienced legal implications on the previous terms of references, which resulted in a need to review the terms of reference prior to the appointment of consultants. Other challenges included withdrawal of electrical and mechanical engineers, procurement of services regarding civil structural engineers for planning and design took 8 months to complete, Chair. As we continue, Chair, on the next slide, in terms of reasons, there is other network fixed infrastructure. This is within our IT space. We had a rollover budget approved by National Treasury, which had a limited spending at the end of January, with some expenditure anticipated to be spent by 15th March. Substantial amount, remaining amount is at risk of not being spent, as SAPS is dependent on SITA to finalize the appointment of the equipment procurement tender for outstanding equipment or appointment of a service provider to implement at the site. We also experienced challenges on the ICJS allocation that we have received. This is earmarked funding. We are having SLA commitments of which less than 50% was spent as at end of January, but it is anticipated to be spent in full as outstanding invoices were received in December, January, and February invoices should still be received and paid. It is projected that some ICJS allocated funding within the IT environment is at risk of not being spent. Procurement processes should still be concluded by SITA for the numerous infrastructure upgrade, procurement of equipment, and appointment of service contract in this regard. Chair, we have been monitoring on a weekly basis. We are monitoring and have put systems in place to mitigate and to ensure that we ensure full utilization. To this end, Chair, as I indicated, the replacement vehicle orders were placed with other manufacturers after orders were cancelled by some manufacturers that experienced a delay in the manufacturing process that resulted in available vehicle shortages. Alternative initiatives and procurement embarked upon in the technology environment space. We are also having regular monitoring, evaluation, and timeless interventions to ensure realization of services within an acceptable time frame. Continuous engagement and escalation of challenges brought about by third party. This was alluded to, the third party dependencies. We escalate so that there could be intervention at relevant level. Internal control measures have been put in place to ensure that spending on building projects is accelerated and to reduce underspending. That includes invoices for work completed are regularly followed up to ensure payments are made. Payment certificates will be received before the end of March 2022 for targeted capital works projects on the contracts of police stations. Chair, the installation of generators contracts were awarded during October 2021. And we also had additional measures that we had initiated to ensure that the allocation for the new financial year is spent in accordance with the allocation as additional personnel has been recruited to improve capacity. This is within the infrastructure environments, Chairperson. The project-based budget information has already been submitted to the National Treasury, and the engagement relating to the project monitoring system to be implemented is in progress. The project monitoring committee between SAPS and National Department of Public Works and Infrastructure will also be activated to continuously evaluate and monitor the projects on the progress on projects. A contingency plan has been put in place to redirect savings emanating from projects that are experiencing problems. So those are some of the mitigating actions that we have put in place to ensure that we do not encounter problems, Chair. Thank you very much. That will be the end of the presentation.
Thanks very much, CFO. Are there additions to the presentation before I give honorable members? Any addition?
There are no additions, Honorable Chair. Safe to say that when we look at our projections, the over expenditure, as the CFO alluded to the fact that we are redirecting some of the money that we realize, which is not earmarked, can be shifted to fund other priorities that were not initially funded. We are working on that on a weekly basis. We're sitting together while she is monitoring on a daily basis. Together, every Monday, we sit together and look how far we are going. So we are projecting that we will be able to really, if things goes as planned, maybe we will be underspending by less than R1 billion. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General. You are saying maybe you are not giving us an assurance. Okay. Honorable Whitfield, followed by Honorable Ted Planch. I see only those two hands for now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Benny. Honorable Whitfield.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, the questions that I have, the first question is related to the comparative analysis in, I don't recall the slide, but the color-coded comparative analysis of under expenditure for each month over the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. If we look at July and August 2021, you can see that the 2021-2022 financial year compared to other years has underspent more than in preceding years. So if you look at July, it was 29.8%. If you look at August, it was 37.6%. Now, we know that those months were incredibly difficult months for our country. These were the months when the violent unrest took place in South Africa. And then obviously we would have anticipated increased expenditure to contain any unrest, any emergency procurement or any issues of that nature. It just seems a bit strange that we would underspend in those months. And is there any reason why we would not spend more money given an emergency that we faced in this country, such as the unrest in July? That's the one question, Chair. And then in terms of the ICJS funding, can we just get some clarity on the impact on specific outcomes? So, I mean, I understand that, you know, it's an issue of procurement or whatever with IT systems or issues with CETA or whatever the case may be, but what are the actual tangible SAPS outcomes that are going to be affected? Which specific divisions are likely to be affected in terms of that underspending? And then if we could get an indication of SAPS's percentage compliance with the 30-day payment of suppliers. You know, are we on track? Are we spending, you know, is it 100% of suppliers paid within 30 days, 80%? Are we on 70%? That would just give us an indication of the actual ability to manage sort of current accounts. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, do you want me to follow?
Yes, please.
Chairperson, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the police had a very good track record for spending their budget, but we had an under expenditure last year, and I think that we are heading for an under expenditure once again. And my concern is that there is a threat of fiscal dumping because, you know, the financial year is just about gone. Chairperson, then I also noticed that the police didn't spend anything. You know, there was a 7.3 million rand allocated to get some dogs for their K9 unit, and not a cent of that amount was spent. And obviously that impacts on crime prevention. So that is rather concerning, Chairperson. Chairperson, and then coming to capital assets, I see that the police, you know, they started with some police stations in 2014. Now, this is 8 years now. And I just want to know, you know, apparently, are they really going to be able to complete those police stations after 8 years now? Going forward on that, you know, apparently there's a serious problem with the Department of Public Works. And my question is, what do the minister intend doing about that? I would think that it will be maybe worthwhile for the minister to engage his colleague at Public Works and see whether a solution can possibly be found. Maybe they can just, you know, tell us about what is happening in that environment. Chairperson, and then the vehicles, I fully understand what happened there, but my question is that, okay, they placed orders now with other manufacturers. My question is it local manufacturers or are they now in fact fully built up vehicles imported from somewhere else? Because obviously it's got an impact on job creation in our own country. And that is why I want to get that information. Chairperson, there are such a lot of issues, you know, and it must also be remembered that the police were not able to spend their allocation in the previous financial year. And yet we are we are saying that we don't have, sufficient budget. Obviously, that's not the case, Chairperson. Thank you. My questions for now.
Honorable Shambeli.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions, no matter. Honorable de Blanche tried to cover me on some of the questions, but the state and capacity of the K9 dog unit should be explained by the SAPS, since he did mention that according to the budget, nothing has been done since the end of January 2022. None of the available funds was spent on the procurement of dogs. And looking at the issue of borders, roadblocks, and anywhere, we don't see any dogs anymore. I think it's a very big concern because drugs like dagga and some other things are being transported every day. So in our borders, we don't see dogs on our roadblocks. I don't know what is happening. I need an explanation on that one. Number two, why payments of overtime accumulated during December 2021 on the local government elections were not paid? Because here it shows that until December 2021, these payments have not yet been made of the local government elections of November 2021. Secondly, why is the transfer of a 1 million rand to the educational trust to provide bursaries to children of SAPS members who died on duty was not paid by the end of January 2022? And then when will the funds be transferred? Can the SAPS provide us then with the details of the administration of the trust in terms of the number of the so-called the bursaries that given to or given and associated issues? I think these are the three questions that I would like clarity on. The one with the transfer of the 1 million rand to the educational trust, and then the issue of the payments of overtime accumulated during the 2021 local government elections, where they were delayed. And by the end of December 2021, these payments have not yet been made. Can I get a clarity on these three issues? And then on the issue of cars, the allocation of cars, Chairperson, I think there is a big problem, because I've noticed that in the rural areas, the cars that are supposed to be allocated to these stations are not allocated. Instead, you'll find that those cars are allocated in towns like Land Cruisers. For instance, I'm giving an example. These cars like Land Cruisers needs to be allocated to these mountainous areas and these rural areas, but they are not there. You will find them in town and normally in specialized unit, whereby those cars are being owned by members as 108. They belong to them. You won't get that vehicle I don't want to mention the races, but what I've noticed is that those cars belongs to certain individuals, not to the state. They are 108s. That means now they cannot be utilized by other members. It's only that member. Then it's his or her family car. That's why we're experiencing a problem. I think the SAPS should look into that. We've noticed this thing happening in Manguzi. I've seen they were chasing cars, they were having Land Cruisers there because they were chasing those cars or those stolen vehicles in mountains. That is the right thing. But now in the trusts next to the borders, from those stations that are situated in those areas, I think they deserve to get better vehicles in order to be utilized in those mountainous areas. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much for those questions. Honorable Minister, we're in your hands.
Yes, Chairperson, it does look like most of the questions that were raised by honorable members would be technical questions. Why less pay in July when they expected the number to be up? I guess maybe as they give figures there was a lot of money that was paid in July of a overtime, unless it is delayed, but it will have to be explained again, Chairperson. The question of the money of the cluster going forward, it's a problem of all segments taking the decision on dealing with this one. Indeed, Honorable Whitefield, there will be a negative impact for the fact that the integrated approach from A to B or from A to Z of the cluster has not been achieved. But specific specs can be set by, again, the people that work on that environment, what is exactly the thing. But it's one thing that has been raised time and again on this money. Though there is a new way of working on the money, that now it has been ring-fenced by the treasurer, that this amount will be for this department, this amount will be for this department in the cluster. Honorable Mr. Whitefield, one thing that this money has caused, the damage you see on the environment and environment of forensic sciences is this money, because at one time police use it as theirs, and when there was instruction to say give cash, give Caesar to what belongs to Caesar, police were found wanting on this money. Is one money that has really caused us a negative impact moving from it to where we are, though we're adjusting, I'm sure, but it can be explained going forward. Compliance, they will tell which is the policy of the government. I hope we're complying with the 30 days, but they will tell. Honorable Telegraph, I think it's always good to speak about swimming to a swimmer. You have been in this environment, Honorable Telegraph, of the infrastructure of the South African police. You have been around this. I can remind you that one time we were in one flight from Durban. You were from Mzuze police station at Maphumulo. That police station has not changed. That police station still have the same prefabs, which are in a bad state now. But we remember, Honorable Taylor Bradshaw, that the station of Inanda, how long did it take to build, and how much was the change of the original budget from 15 million to 47 million. So we tried to correct the thing by creating the internal capacity of dealing with this matter of the infrastructure. We still believe that will help a lot. I don't know what it will take to put that capacity within the South African police, because even when you look at the time frames of our sister department, things like clearing the site, I think the time given is a year just to clear the site. I don't know what else, but nothing goes less than the year when you really need that police station. By the time the police station finishes, the communities are almost fed up and all that kind of stuff. You would know, Honorable Taylor Bradshaw, of what used to be the accommodation in the Durban Central. What has become of it? You ask every day, why was it allowed to reach where it is now? Why don't we pick it up and all that kind of thing? And then the question again will be public works. I have had the meetings with my counterpart in public work to raise issues on the infrastructure of the South African police, which it doesn't give much hope going forward under the present circumstances. We are having trouble on some matters. Somebody yesterday spoke about that new building of Telkom, which has been there for many years. We have gone to see the offices, but we have told that we can't come to the offices. The other major problem will be the issue of leases when it comes to this department. We have buildings, honorable members, that are condemned, that police have nothing to do with them. But police are told at the later stage that the lease has been already extended on the condemned building instead of finding the new building. Is one area of this infrastructure that is giving us a real headache. I don't know how we'll solve it. I think capacity building internally would really help. But it is a difficult capacity. It's a very difficult capacity to build. By the way, it's not only public works on that. SETA issues are serious issues. We have tried, I think we are trying to work on the relationships, but there are times when we don't see things eye to eye. Unfortunately, those things, they impact on the working of the police. But I hope, and I think at the present moment we are trying to improve the relationship on that one. Again, is an area which, if the capacity, which is not a very hard capacity to achieve, since we do have our IT section which can improve on that one. We believe life can be even better on that one. K9, they will answer why, but somebody spoke about the non-availability of dogs, so they will really explain why the delay, Honorable Shimbeni, of paying the police, which is a wish that they get their money as they finish to work. I don't know about that education trust you wanted to know. Unfortunately, we spoke about it a few days ago with the Deputy National Commissioner Vuma. You would know, if you do, that is one area that personally is very close in the heart of the Minister of Police dealing with that matter. It has been dilapidated, it has had some problems, Honorable Member, but we are really re-looking at it to revamp it, because it will be a serious criminal offense from our side if we allow that thing to collapse. By the way, you are from this environment. You know that people that die in this environment are not those that are senior, are not those that have already accumulated some wealth in the system, but are those that are young, and as they die young, which means they leave people, kids very, very young. I will remember one funeral that I attended in Kraaifontein in Cape Town some years ago. The young member that we're burying was 23, the wife was 19, carrying a 3 months old. So these things, as you know, as you see them, that's a project we can't allow Honorable Shembeni to go down. So I'm glad that you are raising it, but maybe DNC will expand what's happening about it, what are we trying to do it. I think we can also try to collect the information, because I'm told that there are several graduates now that come from that system, which will be a good thing to come and give that good news to the members what this has done. But I will allow there for the further expansion from the DNC Vuma. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister. And let me appreciate the questions that have been posed by our honorable members. The slide with regards to comparative analysis, where the honorable member wanted to know why we have spent low somewhere in July and August. I think the majority of the expenditure there is based on the overtime payment. So overtime payment, when it has been worked in July, we allow the month to complete and we process the overtime payment the following month. So that might be one of the reasons why it is a little bit low in July, because July, they were still working. The processes of payment had to take place the following month. So in some instances, you'll find that even though the procurement process might have been initiated in July, but delivery takes place maybe towards the end of the month, then the payment gets finalized the following month. That could be some of the reasons. And I want to couple that together with a question that was asked by Honorable Shembeni with regard to the loss expenditure in November against the month of December. It may be as a result of the very same explanation that I'm saying, that we might have worked a lot of overtime during the elections, which is part of November month, but the processing of those payments took place in December. Hence, December will look like it is high in expenditure. It is not because we are dumping, doing the fiscal dumping, but this is how the payment, mostly for overtime, is getting realized. You first allow the month to where people are working overtime to complete, then you start to initiate the processes of payment right at the end of the month. With regards to the issue of the ICJ funding, the minister has touched on it, and that definitely the criminal justice system gets affected in that regards. However, the environment that are mostly affected is the forensic services and detectives environment. In regard to specific projects that might have been affected by this situation, I will allow Major General Mulauzi to provide the specifics after I have finalized my explanations. The issue of the dogs, I will equally request General Masemula to allude to that matter. With regards to the issue that the minister has alluded to, the matter that is very, very close to the heart of our minister, we have experienced some challenges. We normally get only this 1 million, as you rightfully said, Honorable Shemben, from the budget of the police, which is not enough at all to cover the education for our fallen heroes. So we used to do what we call a fundraising exercise every January, where during the time of Police Day. But unfortunately, the past 2 years, it has not been practically possible to do that for us because of we were affected by COVID-19. So we ended up with a very limping situation, which we are starting to revitalize. We got some assistance to get some payment from Old Mutual. However, the matter where you are requesting us to provide the number of bursaries that have taken place, that we have issued, we'll be able to compile that in the form of a report. But as the minister has rightfully said, there are initiatives to revitalize and to make sure that this environment receives the necessary attention that it deserves. Some of the challenges that we experience is the resignation of the board of directors during this time of difficulty, which we are resuscitating to get the new board members in that space. I think the minister has addressed most of the issues, including the one of the police stations. With your permission, Honorable Chairperson, I will allow General Masemula to talk about the issues of the dogs and General Mulawusi to come in regard to the specific projects that are being affected by the ICJS budget. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you. I thought Lieutenant General Masemola would just come in.
Chairperson, if I may, it's General Ndaba, the Acting Divisional Commissioner at Visual Policing and Operations. General Masemola looks like he's not connected in this meeting because he had a meeting earlier before this meeting. So I would respond, if I may, allowed to respond on the issue of procurement of dogs.
You are allowed.
Thank you, Chairperson, and our Honorable Minister. Good morning. The issue of the procurement of dogs, yes, the budget shows that we haven't done anything up to so far, but the whole process has been finalized in terms of the procurement of dogs. Currently, we are at a stage where we are assessing the dogs from the suppliers so that then we'll be able to get the right dogs. We have got our vet services that's assisting us in leading the process of the assessment of dogs, and also the Department of HRD, because they also have got assessors within that period. So we definitely are looking forward to the finalization of this process on the procurement of dogs, where the budget will be utilized by the end of this financial year. Chairperson, I submit. Thank you.
Hello.
Honorable Chairperson, shall we also allow the CFO to allude on the late transfer of a 1 million?
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. In terms of the 1 million donation to the trust, that we awaited the adjusted bill to be signed. It was only signed in January. We have corresponded with the trust to ensure that there is compliance in terms of Section 38 of the PFMA. Once that confirmation is received from the trust, then this particular donation will be finalized in this regard. Thank you, Chair.
General Mulawusi, can you please explain the specific projects from CFA with your permission, Chairperson.
General Mlaudzi.
Maybe, Honorable Chair, he's struggling. He was in the meeting, he is in the meeting. It might be the issue of connectivity. Yeah, he is in the meeting. Let me quickly call him, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you very much. If he is unable to come in, we will be able to submit with all other reports the specifics of the project that are affected by this non-expenditure. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Are there further questions, colleagues? I see the hand of Honorable Shembeni, Honorable Whitfield, and Honorable Terblanche. Honorable Shembeni? Is it a legacy hand? Honorable Whitfield?
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, the Minister directed the SAPS to respond to the question of 30-day payment of suppliers. That question has not been dealt with. So I would ask, please, that we get an answer to that as well.
Okay, Honorable Terblanche?
Chairperson, Chairperson, thank you. I didn't get a response on my question regarding the vehicles. And then I also want the police maybe to explain what the problem is with Polmed for members regarding COVID-19 and injury on duty. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. SAPS?
Mbuma.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm not so sure in regard to the question of Polmed injury on duty. What exactly is the question specifying? With regard to 30 days payment, I will allow the CFO to expatiate in that regard, and as well as the issue of the vehicle, General Hankins, the acting divisional commissioner, will be able to provide us whether those placement of orders redirected, are they locally manufactured or otherwise? Thank you, Chairperson. CFO and General Hankins, please. And General Molaudi was kicked off by the system. He is ready now if the Chairperson so allows to respond.
Thank you, Chairperson. The question of payment of service providers within 30 days, I must just indicate that the department is compliant at 99.76%. You will have invoices that we are disputing, where we have to go back to the service providers to clear those disputes. But in terms of compliance, we are at 99.76%, Chairperson. In terms of the IODs, Chair, we had cases where members could prove that they had contracted injury on duty when it comes to COVID-19. We are working with our medical aid to validate those particular cases so that we ensure that the relevant payments are made within prescripts that governs the IOD payments. So we are in that particular process working with our medical schemes because there are payments that needs to be made. That process is unfolding. We anticipate that by the end of March, that particular process would have been concluded in this regard. Thank you, Chair.
General Hankins, please come in. if General Hankins is kicked off, shall we allow General Mlaudzi to respond to the specific projects that are affected by ICJS budget? General Mlaudzi, please, with your permission, Chair.
General Mlaudzi.
I'm sure he is kicked out again, Honorable Chairperson. I will check with him. Thank you very much.
If they are kicked out, can we say we receive a written response to those questions with details, because maybe they are the ones who are having details to the questions. Will that be fine, honorable members?
Fine, Chairperson.
Thank you. I think we have done justice to this item. I don't see any more hands. Therefore, we can step out of this item and move to the next one. Babalwa, what's the next item? Oh, I see.
Chair, this was the last item.
This was the last item.
Yes, Chair.
All right. Can I give the minister your parting words as we move towards closing the meeting?
Chairperson, with your permission, I would allow the Deputy Minister to round off for us on this one.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Minister, and thanks, members of the committee for your questions and comments in this regard. We can confirm that we share the same sentiments with yourselves that every cent that we are given, we should spend it, because we are not a savings bank. We have no business in a saving. We need to spend, and any amount that is not spent is a serious concern to us, and the minister has been leading in this regard to ensure that this aspect is dealt with. The issues you have raised, we will definitely look at them to improve our expenditure. In this regard, around infrastructure, we are also considering interacting with IDT, which you all know that it's an institution created by the state to assist with social infrastructure delivery. We are at the moment currently setting up, facilitating an engagement with them so that we can discuss how we can collaborate with them to assist us in this regard, so that going forward, we don't have a recurring problem occurring under our watch. But as we always say that every time we interact with the portfolio committee, we come out richer in terms of being sharpened to do better as we leave the portfolio. And we also make the same commitment like we did last year, that we will continue to work to reduce this challenge that brought us here today. I hope and believe that in the next financial year, we'll have a different outcome. But thank you very much. And thanks, Generals, for having been able to respond to the questions that were asked, and also appreciate that General Libya was also part of the platform. We might not have indicated that in the beginning, but we appreciate the platform, Chair. Thanks, Minister, once more for having been able to lead us appropriately in this space. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, GM. And thank you very much, honorable members. A special thanks to Dr. Bosopu, who is a member of our committee. This was his first meeting, if I'm correct. And I think as we go on, he will be able to input and contribute productively to the discussions. Thank you very much, DM and Minister and your staff for coming to the meeting. And thank you, honorables, members of the Portfolio Committee and our support staff. You are always doing a good job. We know sometimes you are forced to do things under pressure. Sometimes the chairperson, we just change time without consulting some of you, but it's because of material conditions on the ground. So we really appreciate your understanding on such kind of issues. And thanks very much. We had budgeted 8 to 11 for our meeting. I think that we started late, but we managed to be on time and deal with issues that needed attention of the committee. Having said that, the meeting stand adjourned until we meet again next week. Enjoy the rest of your day. The meeting is over.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Majozi.
Chair. Thank you, Minister. Though you don't speak to me these days, I don't know. Are we in a dispute or something?
I'm never going on with you.
Okay. All right, Minister. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.